Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off the quest for lore. Hi-ho, hi-ho. What's going on, fellow Illuminators? Welcome back in. I'm Lorcana Thanos, and today we are continuing our thematic deck profiles with Heigh-Ho, a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs deck profile. Let's check out the list. All right, so here we have our list for Heigh-Ho, a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs deck profile. So just keep in mind that it's meant to be a thematic, fun, like casual kitchen table, even local level deck profile. So it's a lot of fun. It is Amber Amethyst. It's 60 cards. And as you can see, it comes in at just under $70, which isn't terrible. This is my second favorite thematic deck that I've done outside of my champion of Sherwood Forest, the Robin Hood one. So you can click the card up here and you can check that out. But be sure to finish this video first, of course. But this deck really embodies the very first film in the Disney canon, being Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that's what I try to do with these decks, right? So if we look at it, like I said, it's just under $70. You have 48 inkables and obviously 12 non-inkables. So it's a pretty standard, pretty fair ratio. If you look at the curve graph here, we're very low on ones. There's a super high amount of twos and threes, and then we scale it down from there. That doesn't really come up too much when playing this deck. Building this deck was pretty interesting, and you'll see why, and it's because of our color combination. But let's go ahead and dive in. We have 36 characters, 4 copies of the Regal Monarch, One Drop Queen. She's obviously the main villain of the film, and she's actually the primary way that this deck functions. Ironically enough, 2 copies of Sleepy. Sleepy is okay. He's all right. He's a inkable 2. That's a 2/3 with 2 pips. I wanted to play all the dwarves. So I only run 2. Reason why is he's really interesting. It's kind of thematic. So he has an ability called Yawn that he enters play exerted, which is pretty interesting. So it's almost like you're playing a character with bodyguard without the protection ability, right? So, but the 2 lore does come in handy. And then 2 copies of Sneezy. So Sneezy's a inkable 1/4 with a pip that when you play him or another Seven Dwarf character, you may give, so you don't have to because of the may, a chosen character -1 strength this turn. That did come up in testing a few times, and I didn't want to go like 3 copies of these guys. I thought they were fine where they were. The linchpin of the deck outside of our queen is Snow White, Unexpected House Guest. So she's a non-inkable 2 cost that has 1 strength, 2 willpower, and a lore pip. And the reason why you run her is for her ability. You pay 1 less ink to play 7 dwarf characters. And if you get multiple copies of this card out, they will, of course, stack, which is absolutely fantastic for this deck. There are times when I've had 2 to 3 copies of this card out, and I'm playing dwarves for free. So that's really good. All right, so continuing with our list, 4 copies of Doc, Leader of the Seven Dwarfs. So he's a inkable 3 cost. That's a 2/3 with 2 pip. Doc is very solid, actually. I've never played with this card, and it's very good. So, what Doc does is whenever he quests, you pay 1 less ink for the next character you play this turn, which of course does work on shift costs as well, which you'll see here in a minute. But 2 pips, 3 willpower is pretty good. He's inkable, and then so what I like to do is I like to quest with Doc and have the Unexpected House Guest Snow White out, and then that's -2, especially if I'm playing a dwarf. So our next dwarf, 3 copies of Dopey. Dopey's inkable 2/2 with 1 pip, and when he's banished, your other 7 dwarf characters get +2 strength until the start of your next turn. So again, the dwarves, there's a lot of synergy with the dwarves. I think they did a really good design with the dwarves. Next up, for thematic purposes, 2 copies of the Queen Hateful Rival from Into the Inklands. So she's a inkable 3 cost. That's a 4/3 with a war pip, and that's really all she does. She's in here not just to get more representation for the queen, to have another shift target, and that does come up sometimes. Next up, our next dwarf, 2 copies of Bashful. He's a inkable 4 cost. That's a 2/5 with 3 lore pips. Um, 1, love the willpower, and obviously love the amount of lore pips he has. The thing about Bashful though is his ability. So he can't quest unless you have another 7 dwarf in play. So it's that is a huge downside if your opponent is smart enough to snipe the dwarves out. But it is very thematic. But if he's able to stick and you're able to protect the other dwarves, then it makes sense. Next up, 3 copies of Grumpy. So Grumpy is a inkable 4 cost, who's a 3/4 with a lore pip, and what he does is he gives your other 7 dwarves a boost and +1 strength. So again, we have just a lot of synergy with what the dwarves do. And renting out our dwarves is 2 copies of Happy. So Happy is a inkable 5 cost. It's a 3/5 with 2 lore pips, and he just has support. Um, I was running 3 initially, and Happy just didn't really do a whole lot. But again, in order to get the full representation for what I like to do when I build these decks, I had to run them, so I settled at 2. So next up, 4 copies of the Queen Commanding Presence. If you play competitive Lorcana, especially Steel Song, you know exactly what this card is. This card is insane. I play it in Steel Song, but on a thematic level, like this card is insane. So Inkable 5 cost shift for 2. That's a 4/3 with 2 lore pip. And then whenever she quests, chosen opposing character gets -4 strength and this turn, and chosen character gets +4 strength this turn. So outside of the Snow White that reduces the cost on the dwarves, this card is the linchpin of the deck because she's how you're going to be able to sing most of your songs. You're going to quest early and do reduction, and then you use your dwarves to snipe off your opponent's characters. And then I run 1 copy of the Queen Wicked in Vain from the first chapter. Inkable 5 costs. That's a 4/5 with a lore pip. She's in here as a pseudo draw engine. Ideally, I should run 2 of her for more consistency. But again, she's in here for thematic purposes to be maybe a somewhat pseudo draw engine and to have another shift target for the Queen Commanding Presence. Branding out our characters, we have 3 copies of Snow White Well-Wisher. So I've always really enjoyed this card. It's a non-inkable 6 cost. It's a 3/5 with 2 lore pips, and it's just for 4. But because you have Doc, you're able to reduce that down to a 3. And then whenever she quests, you may return a character from your discard to your hand. So if you lose your dwarves, guess what? That's perfectly fine. Or if you lose your queen, guess what? That's perfectly fine. This card is absolutely fantastic in this deck specifically, and I think like even there's maybe some hidden potential for this card in Amber going forward. So let's continue to our songs. We have 16 songs, so 4 copies across the board. Obviously, friends on the other side, we need a way to draw, and we're playing Amethyst, so we have that. Bare necessities for just you know anti-song, anti-item type stuff for Be Our Guest. So, obviously, none of these songs are thematically relevant to Snow White. There's not really a lot in that realm. And this in combination is very interesting for song choices. There's not a lot of good ones outside of what I'm running. So Be Our Guest is a way to dig, and this card puts in so much work in this deck. So I'm able to dig for my Snow Whites and my Queens. Primarily, what you want to dig for if you don't open with them. And this card does so much work in this deck. And then as a mini, because again, I'm trying to keep it thematic. If I was just outright playing the deck, I would just run Rapunzel, get to with healing. But because this is a thematic relevant, we have a song version of her somewhat. And we're running 4 copies of Heal What Has Been Hurt. So you remove up to 3 damage from chosen character and you draw a card. So it's a good way to heal your Well-Wisher, your Queen, either of these, your Doc. So I really enjoy the card. We have 5 items. So we run 4 copies of Sleepy's Flute. So obviously, if you play Steel Song or play against Steel Song, you know all about this card. Non-inkable 2-cost item. You exert it, and if you play a song this turn, you gain 1 lore. Just like in Steel Song, you want to get multiples of these out on board, and it's thematically relevant because it's Sleepy's Flute. And then one copy of Magic Mirror. I hate this card so much. I hate this card so much, but it's in here for thematic relevance. If you're newer to the game and you don't know what it does, it's from the first chapter. It's a non-ink equal to cost item that you exert it and you pay 4 ink to draw a card. That is so bad. That is so bad. But it's in here just for thematic relevance to say that I run the Magic Mirror. And lastly, for our final 3 cards, 3 locations, and you should probably know what it is: Queen's Castle. So ideally, you want to run 4, but to keep the thematic relevance, I couldn't find a way to cut, and I didn't want to run 61. So just running 3 copies of Queen's Castle. This card is so good. I don't need to tell you guys that. So it's a 4 cost inkable location that's 1 movement cost, 7 willpower, and 2 lore pips. And then at the start of your turn, for each character you have here, you draw a card. Fantastic. So Queen's Castle is another way that is basically your draw engine for the deck, and yeah, that is the list. I highly recommend you guys check it out. So there you have it. That is going to do it for our Heigh-Ho, a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs deck profile. Be sure to let me know down below what you thought of the list. Let me know what kind of changes you would make. Remember, this is just a thematic list, so I don't have a more competitive one. So just try to keep that in mind. As always, be sure to give me one of these bad boys. They're super helpful for getting the video seen in the YouTube algorithm. As always, if you like the content and you want to see more Lorcana content here on the channel, be sure to smash the subscribe button and click that bell so you get notified when I upload new videos every Tuesday and Friday. And as always, you can follow me on the artist formerly known as Twitter on X at Lorcana Thanos. And remember, the hardest choices require the strongest wills. Bye.